A stack, I have to tell you, is actually one of the simplest data structures out there. Okay, it's easier than a linked list, it's easier than a tree, easier than a queue. Even the code is quite simple. So the algorithms or the functions that you can apply or implement on a stack is push. When you push something to a stack, it means, for example, let's say I want to push 3. Push means you're putting stuff inside it. So if I push 3, 3 is going to come here. If I push 20, 20 is going to come there. So I can keep pushing stuff, maybe 5, maybe a 1, and then a 0. Okay, that's pushing. When I pop stuff, pop means to delete stuff. And remember, in a stack, the last thing you added inside will be the first one to come out. So the last thing I added inside was a 0. Once I pop from the stack, it's going to pop the 0 out. Then when I pop again, it's gonna pop the 1 out. Okay, stuff like that. The top function, what it does, it just shows you what's at the top of the stack. Now 0 is at the top of our stack, so it's going to show us a 0. It's not going to return the 0, it's just going to print it out, meaning like right now at this moment in time 0 is at the top of our stack. That's what it's showing us. Okay, the top function. Then of course is full just shows you if the if the stack is full. Is empty just shows you if the stack is empty. And then we can have some display functions. What display does is it just deletes everything from the stack. So it's going to first pop that out, then it's going to pop that out, it's going to pop it and print it, pop it and print, pop it and print. So it's going to empty out the array or the stack. I'm going to say stack, and I'm going to make an ADT, or actually leave ADT out. Okay, so I'm just going to create a stack class. Okay, and then I'm just going to make, for example, I'm going to keep stuff private. And remember, in a stack, whenever you're coding a stack, there's going to be 3 variables inside of it. First is going to be the array. Next is going to be the size, and the last one is going to be count. Okay, and then after that I'm going to keep everything public. Now these are just 3 variables in the side of the stack. What the array is the actual stack itself, and it's a pointer because we want to implement this on a heap. Okay, we're going to make it on the heap. We don't want to make it a normal variable. Size tells you like the length of your stack, right? Count tells you the number of elements inside of the stack. Then I'm making the constructor. Okay, I'm going to pass in the s for size. So I want the user to define the size of this stack. Then I want an array with that number of elements that the user defined. I want it to be created, and then I want the count to be initialized to 0. So we're starting with 0 elements inside of the stack. That's why count is equal to 0. If our stack is full, well, the way to do this is that we're going to check if our count, remember count tells you how many elements are inside of the array. So if count will be equal to our size, then we're going to return true or false based on that. Okay, this is a ternary operator. I don't know if this confuses you, but don't be confused. It's quite simple. This just checks if size is equal to count. If it is, it's going to return true, else it's going to return false. Then we can have an isEmpty function. Okay, and the way to find out if something is empty is that we're going to check if count is equal to 0. Simple as that. Okay, so we coded out is full and is empty. The next thing we want to code out would be our main functions, which is push and pull. Now these are going to have an integer data type. So I'm going to code out push first. Let me make this lower cap, or actually no, okay, make it caps. Push, and then I'm going to put in the data that I want to push into this. Now before you push something inside of this stack of yours, you have some edge cases. Okay, one thing you want to check out is if your stack is full. Okay, you want to check, because if it is full, then you cannot push any more stuff inside of it. Now if the stack is full, okay, the thing you want to do is the following. Actually no, you want to check first is full. Okay, if it is full, then you want to return minus 999, And before we actually return minus 999, actually no, we don't even need to return something. Well, I don't know what was I thinking. Okay, we just want to return nothing, and I want a message to be printed out. If it isn't full, then I want this to happen. I want my array, okay, and I want to assign it the data that I've passed into the function. Now before I assign this function, what do you think needs to go inside of this array index brackets? We're not going to put a 0, we're not going to put a 1 or a 2, we want it to be dynamically updated, so we're going to put in the count. Okay, count is going to tell us where to put inside of our array, because remember, count is counting how many elements are inside. So if I have 0 elements, then count is going to be 0, right? But then also I want to increment count after that, so I'm going to say after that, because now since we've added one element inside of it, I want to get count plus plus. If you're a bit fast, you would understand that because you'd understand we don't even need to have this extra line of code. We can instead of writing this here, we can do it there. Okay, you can write it like this, how I did, like this, or you can write it like this. Both ways would work, whichever one suits you, but since we're experienced programmers, we're going to go like that. Pop, you don't need a parameter, so delete that. Now when you want to pop, there's an edge case. One thing you want to check for is that if you popped everything from the stack and there are 0 and your stack gets empty, there's 0 items in your stack, so you want to check for that. You want to check is empty. If it is empty, stack is empty, and you want to return. Else, if it isn't empty, do this, count minus minus. Okay, you don't really need this line of code here. You can delete that. Count minus minus would be fine. One issue with pop is that it returns something, right? So we need an int, right? And because it's an int, when we return and it's empty, we can say return 99 minus 999. When our stack is full, then our count is going to be 5. Okay, count is going to be 5. So this is like, remember, this is the 0 index, this is 1, this is 2, 3, 4, and count is going to be pointing right over here to 5th, right? That's where count is. So the reason we put minus minus count is that we first want to decrement count, so we want to bring count over here. Alright, so count is now here by the 0. Alright, and then once I add something, right, I run the push function again, then it's going to first push something here. So say I want to push maybe 5 or 5, no, leave 5, push maybe 7, right? So this is going to override the 0 and is going to make it a 7, and then it's going to increment count again, so count is going to come back here on the 5th position, see here, right? So this is the logic. Count is going to first put D where count currently is, and then after that it's going to increment count, and here it's going to decrement count. So yeah, that's how it works. If it doesn't make sense, just sit down, practice it, dry run is the best way of understanding code. Otherwise, if you have any other questions, let me know down in the comments. I'm going to explain them, or I'm going to make another video. This is, I'm not going to know if this is difficult for you if you don't tell me it is. Okay, so yeah, the next function is top. However, if the stack isn't empty, then I just want to return some other number, and I want to return the first number. So basically the top one, right, the 7. So how do I do that? First step, if my array would be first step would be to decrement our count variable. Okay, and then I'm gonna say first count minus 1, and then I want to get that index, which is the array, and just return it, okay, within that array. So I want to return it and show what it is. I don't want to decrement count, but I want to count minus 1, because if you decrement count, you're changing the value of count, and that's not something we want to happen. We just want to minus 1 from count, and that's going to return our index where the top value exists. And another thing I forgot to do here by pop, you can leave it like this if you want, but you have to return something. So I'd say, because you're popping stuff from the array, when you pop you want to return something. So I want to return count minus minus. I want to return count. You can leave it like that, or if you're an expert programmer or an experienced one, then you can remove this line over here and you can just say count minus minus here. Use the pre-decrement, because we want to first decrement and then we want to return it from the array. However, if you want to do a post decrement like this, then what that's going to do is that it's going to first return count from the array, alright, the count index, and then after it's done returning that, then it's going to decrement, and that's not something we want to happen. The display function is quite a simple function, okay, while it's not empty, then we want to keep popping. Yeah, that's pretty much all it is. Destructor as well, like me, and you know, because we're using pointers, we do want to use a destructor. It's good practice. So that's how you just delete your array once you delete your stack. So that's it. Thanks for watching.